Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. She said I dropped the baby. The video she showed was blurry, short, and silent, but I knew I hadn't let go. There was a flicker of disbelief on my son's face, the kind that looks almost like pity. His mouth stayed tight as he sat across from me, knees bouncing, hands clenched. I watched him glance at her, my daughter-in-law, Elise, waiting for her silent permission before he dared to look at me again. I just, I think it's best if we take a step back, Mom, for everyone's safety. Safety. That word snapped something in me. I'm 74 years old. I've raised 3 children, taken care of my husband until his dying breath, and fed, cleaned, and cradled more babies than I can count across a lifetime of nursing, church volunteering, and neighborly babysitting. But now, suddenly, I was a danger. It started on a Tuesday. I had gone to watch little Nora while Elise had a work call. Nora had just turned 1, a plump, giggly little thing with her father's eyes and my hair. I'd rocked her to sleep, like I always did, singing her the old lullabies I once sang to my boys. I remember her little fingers curling around mine as she drifted off in the rocking chair, a patch of drool soaking into my blouse. Then, 3 days later, came the message. Please don't come by the house this week. We need to talk. That talk turned into an ambush. Elise had a tablet in her lap, and she played a video. No sound, grainy, with a jumpy cut. It showed me in the nursery, rocking the baby. Then it cut to the baby briefly sliding down my arm in a way that looked jarring, maybe even like I let go. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. The cut was wrong. The timing was wrong. There was no fall. Nora had shifted, that's all, like babies do when they're sleepy and sweaty. I remembered gently lifting her back into position, whispering to her that everything was all right. But none of that was in the video, and no one asked for my side, not even my son. Until we figure this out, he said, I think we should pause visits. I nodded slowly. My bones felt like ice. My tongue couldn't form words without trembling. I got up, walked out, and didn't cry until I was 3 blocks away. My house used to be full of life. Before my husband passed, we had grandkids over almost every weekend. The dining table, scratched and worn, had seen decades of birthday cakes, school projects, late-night tea, and talk. Now it's quiet, the kind of quiet that rings in your ears. I keep everything tidy, but not for guests. Habit, maybe. Or maybe because it's one of the last things I can control. My days are simple. Wake, oatmeal with cinnamon, the news, a walk if the weather allows, reading, knitting, thinking. Sometimes too much thinking. There's a framed photo on the mantel of Nora as a newborn in my arms. I used to light a little candle beside it until it felt too much like a memorial. When the silence started to bruise, I tried to call my son again. I left voicemails, each more careful than the last. He stopped replying. I sent one final message. I would never hurt her. Please believe me. He didn't respond. I started doubting my own memory. Was it possible? Could I have lost grip just for a second? Was my age catching up with me in ways I couldn't even feel? But the memory was clear. The chair, the song, the summer breeze through the window, the way Nora had twitched, then settled back into my arms. I saw it every night when I closed my eyes. And then I remembered the blinking red light on the shelf. The nanny cam Elise had insisted on getting for peace of mind. I never minded. I had nothing to hide, until she decided to hide the truth. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how fast they believed it. Elise barely knew me. I chalked our distance up to personality differences. She was modern, clipped, always checking a screen. I was slower, softer, maybe old-fashioned. But we had coexisted politely until that day. But my son, he used to run into my arms after school. He once called me the strongest woman he knew. He cried on my shoulder when Elise had a miscarriage 2 years ago. And now, he couldn't even look me in the eye. I started walking in the evenings again, even if it hurt. I passed by the playground where I used to take him, now full of other mothers and children. I stayed on the sidewalk. I didn't want anyone calling the police on the unsafe grandmother. The worst part of getting old isn't the body. It's the way people start talking around you, as if your years have robbed you of reason, as if fragility means guilt. Then one day I got a knock on the door. It was Gerald, my late husband's cousin's boy, 40-ish, with a beard and a laptop case slung over his shoulder. He worked in IT. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. "I heard what happened," he said, looking uneasy. "And I know how those cameras work." Gerald sat at my kitchen table like it was foreign territory, hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile I'd offered out of habit. He looked like a man carrying something heavy, like he had debated even coming. "I work with digital video," he said quietly. "Surveillance systems, nanny cams mostly. When I heard what Elise said about the footage, well, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I know those cameras. They don't record in clips. They store everything." I stared at him. "You mean what she showed? It could have been changed?" He nodded. "Easily. You can crop, mute, blur, clip. You can rearrange timestamps if you know what you're doing." "But why would she do that?" He hesitated, then leaned in. "Because she didn't want you around anymore. And sometimes people think if they push someone out early enough, they'll never be questioned." It was the first time someone had said it aloud, what I'd only let myself whisper in the quietest corners of my thoughts. Elise hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a move. "Can you get the original footage?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Gerald nodded. "If the camera's still in use, the files may still be backed up to their cloud account. Do you know what brand it was?" I did. I remembered the packaging. Elise had unboxed it at the kitchen table, showing me how user-friendly it was. "Even you could use it," she'd laughed. Gerald tapped on his laptop, his fingers a blur. "Do you know the Wi-Fi name at their house? Any passwords? Even an old one?" I dug through my notebook, the one where I write down all my passwords, appointments, and grocery lists. In one corner was a scribble. Elise, Wi-Fi, with a string of numbers and a name. "She gave me this when I watched Nora," I said. "I wrote it down in case I needed to connect my phone." He gave a low whistle. "That might just do it." Over the next week, I watched Gerald work like a surgeon. Calm, precise, focused. He set up in my dining room, his laptop surrounded by cables and small devices I didn't recognize. Sometimes he muttered things like timestamp anomaly or scrubbed metadata, and I just made sure he had enough tea. On the fourth evening, I found him sitting back in the chair, eyes wide, staring at his screen. "You need to see this," he said. He played the footage. There I was, rocking Nora, singing, the sun pouring in through the nursery curtains. Nora wriggled, slid a little, but I held her, gently, steadily. I kissed her head. She smiled in her sleep. The footage didn't cut. It continued. Elise came into the room about 5 minutes later. She took Nora from my arms, told me she could take it from there. I left the room. Gerald fast-forwarded. Then, a loud bump. Nora slipped in Elise's arms and hit the padded ottoman. She started crying. Elise looked panicked, checking the camera. Then she turned her back to it. Moments later, the video froze for just a second. "That's the break she edited in," Gerald said. "She clipped you out after the chair. She inserted just the part where Nora fell, on her watch. Then she blurred it, muted it, and passed it off as your negligence." I was silent. A wave of heat moved through my chest, then ice. I felt sick. Not because I had been vindicated, but because someone had wanted me gone so badly they were willing to lie. And the person who had believed them most was my son. The next day, I didn't cry. I wrote a letter. I wrote to my son, not pleading, not accusing, but telling him the truth. I said I had proof. I said I didn't need him to take sides, but I needed him to watch what was real. I told him Gerald would be sending him a secure folder with the full footage. 2 days later, he showed up at my door. He looked broken. He stood there for a long time before he said, "Can I come in, Mum?" I nodded. He sat at the same table Gerald had used, his head in his hands. I watched it, all of it. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I should have known. I didn't want to believe Elise could. I thought maybe you forgot something, that you didn't notice." His voice cracked. "I failed you." I put my hand on his. "You were scared, and you wanted to protect your family, but you forgot I was part of that family too." We sat in silence, both of us mourning something. Trust, maybe. Innocence. I could see that he had aged since the last time I'd seen him up close. Stress lines. Guilt. "I need to make this right," he said. And I believed him. But I also knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, my name, my dignity. I'd been painted as unstable, a danger. I had been isolated, humiliated, nearly erased. But not anymore. I contacted a lawyer. The lawyer I found wasn't flashy. Her name was Mariana Chen, late 50s, glasses low on her nose, voice like velvet over steel. She didn't react with shock or outrage when I showed her the footage Gerald had recovered. She only asked one question. "Are you ready for people to know the truth?" I nodded. "I'll need statements," she said, "and I'll need you to be calm. They may try to turn this back on you. Say you're vindictive, confused, or just trying to hurt the family. But if you want to clear your name, we'll need to be very deliberate. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the long days alone, the voicemails left unanswered, the looks I got when I passed parents with strollers in the park. I thought about Elise's eyes, steady and cool as she watched that edited video, like she was already rewriting me out of my own life. "I'm prepared," I said. We started with a defamation claim. Elise hadn't just whispered something awful. She had created digital evidence and shared it with others, including my son, to justify my removal. Mariana called it malicious falsification, and she said it bordered on elder abuse, using false claims to isolate and disempower a vulnerable family member. "Don't think of this as revenge," Mariana said. "Think of it as restoration. You lost something real. Your relationship with your granddaughter, your standing, your peace. This is how we begin to reclaim it." I gave a full statement, submitted the original video files Gerald had recovered, and handed over every text, voicemail, and email from Elise referencing the incident. Mariana compiled a clear timeline showing how quickly Elise had moved to sever my access, how she had sent the video to my son within hours of Nora's fall, along with lines like, "I don't feel safe with her in the house anymore. She's unstable." Meanwhile, Gerald helped us preserve the metadata from the video. "It's ironclad," he said. Any judge with two eyes and a conscience will see what she did. We filed the claim, and then we waited. I didn't tell anyone in the neighborhood what was happening. I didn't want whispers or pity. But I did start walking with my head a little higher. Not because I was proud, but because I had stopped apologizing for something I didn't do. One afternoon, about a month after the filing, Elise knocked on my door. I didn't recognize her at first. She was thinner, pale, like a wire pulled too tight. Her eyes scanned me like I was a problem to be solved. "May I come in?" she asked. "No," I said simply, stepping onto the porch. "Whatever you have to say it here." She hesitated, then held out a paper, a letter signed by her attorney, suggesting private resolution and asking for me to drop the complaint in the interest of family unity. "You've made your point," she said, tight-lipped. "I think we can agree that misunderstandings happened. No need to drag this out." I stared at her. "You told people I was a threat to a baby. You altered footage to make me look like a monster. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was strategy." Her nostrils flared slightly. "You think this makes you look good? Suing your own family?" "You're not my family," I said. "Not anymore." I handed her back the paper and walked inside, closing the door behind me. My knees trembled a little. Not from fear, from the weight of standing my ground. A hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. But before that could happen, something unexpected shifted. Mariana received a call from Child Protective Services. Apparently, during the legal discovery process, the full videos we had submitted raised new questions. Not about me, but about Elise. The fall Nora had experienced, the one Elise tried to pin on me, hadn't just been a stumble. CPS reviewed the footage and noticed what Gerald had pointed out. Elise didn't attend to the baby for several minutes after she cried. She appeared distracted, even annoyed. When she finally picked Nora up, she shook her slightly, harshly, enough to concern a trained eye. It opened an investigation. My son was blindsided. He called me in tears. "I didn't know," he kept saying. "I didn't know. I didn't gloat. I didn't twist the knife. I told him what I had always told him, that the truth doesn't stay buried forever, and that people who lie to control others eventually lose control themselves." CPS recommended temporary supervision for Elise's parenting while the investigation continued. My son, shaken and newly alert, complied. He moved into a separate apartment with Nora for the time being and began parenting on his own. That same week, the judge overseeing our defamation case ruled in my favor. The evidence was clear, the harm measurable. Elise had to issue a formal retraction in writing, which became part of the public record. More importantly, my visitation rights were restored. I saw Nora for the first time in nearly 6 months on a quiet Saturday morning. My son brought her to the park where we used to go together when he was small. She was bigger now, but her giggle, it hadn't changed. She ran to me like nothing had ever come between us. "Grammy!" she squealed. I lifted her, tears flooding my eyes, and whispered, "There you are, my little songbird." She didn't remember the silence, only the love that came before it. And now, after everything, I was free to give it again. Nora and I fell back into rhythm like no time had passed. She'd tug my sleeve for stories, for songs, for the soft biscuits I always kept in the tin by the stove. We built block towers, folded paper birds, and sang lullabies until she slept in my arms again. Not because she was tired, but because she felt safe. My son started coming by more, too. He was different now, more present, less distracted. He brought takeout and photos of Nora's latest art, sometimes even washed the dishes without being asked. He didn't speak much about Elise anymore, though I could see the heaviness behind his eyes. "She's contesting the custody arrangement," he told me once, while Nora napped on the couch. But the court assigned a parenting evaluator. They're watching everything now. She's on thin ice. I didn't smile. I didn't wish her harm, but I felt something settle, like a long, slow exhale. Elise had spun a web, intricate and polished. But truth, when given room, doesn't need to shout. It simply is. It breathes steady. It waits. And eventually it stands taller than any fiction. That week, Gerald sent me a link. Just a quiet text that read, "You might want to see this." It was a public case summary from the court. Standard release. Elise's name was there, plain and searchable. The document listed her as the defendant in a defamation and digital evidence tampering suit. The judgment against her was clear, and her retraction was embedded in the file. "This will stay on record," Mariana had explained. "It's not jail, it's not cruel, but it's real. And it follows her." Elise had once tried to cast me as a threat, but now anyone who typed her name, a future employer, a neighbor, a friend, would see who she truly was. Not through rage, not through gossip, but through her own actions, documented and visible. That was the difference between vengeance and justice. One corrodes, the other restores. I started volunteering again. At the senior center downtown, helping women my age with tech basics, email, video calls, even online banking. One day, I was teaching an 82-year-old woman named Jo how to mute her microphone on Zoom. She looked up and said, "You're patient. You've got that quiet strength about you." I smiled. Funny thing about strength. It doesn't always look like shouting or standing tall. Sometimes it's just staying upright when no one believes you. Sometimes it's not burning everything down, even when you could. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. One afternoon, I got a call from a reporter with a small parenting blog. She'd come across the court records and wanted to speak with me. "Off the record," she said. "I think it's important to tell stories like yours. Older women, especially mothers-in-law, get painted as overbearing or out of touch. But your case shows how dangerous that stereotype can be." I declined the interview. I didn't need more eyes on Elise. I'd already won what mattered. But that night, I sat down and started writing something else. A letter. Not to Elise, not to my son, to myself. It read, "You held steady. You stayed kind. You didn't shrink. And now, you're free." I redecorated the guest room that fall. Not out of sadness, but because it no longer felt like a shrine to what I lost. I painted the walls a warm sunflower yellow. I bought new sheets, ones with little embroidered daisies, and a soft rug for Nora to crawl on when she came over. She was coming over more and more. Sometimes she stayed the night. One evening, I gave her a bath and let her splash while we sang. I wrapped her in a fluffy towel and carried her to the room, now hers in spirit, if not yet in name. As I tucked her in, she whispered, "You smell like cookies." I laughed. "That's because I'm made of sugar and sass." She giggled. "Can I always come here?" she asked. I paused, then leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Always, sweetheart. Always." Winter came soft that year, the kind that tiptoes in on cold breath rather than crashing through the doors. The kind that reminds you to slow down. Nora and I baked cookies on Sundays. Her little apron had sunflowers on it, like the walls in her room. My arthritis complained as we kneaded dough, but I smiled through it, grateful for every soft mess she made on my kitchen floor. My son, Matthew, started rebuilding more than just time with me. He was rebuilding himself. He went to therapy, started journaling. Once, when we sat in the park, watching Nora feed pigeons with half a muffin, he said quietly, "You know, I don't think I really saw Elise for who she was until she came for you." I nodded. Sometimes it takes losing something precious to realize what's been stolen slowly, piece by piece. He looked at me, eyes wet. "You were never the threat. You were the anchor." He'd filed for divorce 2 weeks after the custody evaluator's final report. It wasn't just about Elise's actions, though those were serious, but also about patterns he finally recognized: the quiet manipulation, the control, the way she isolated people, him included. He was ready to parent differently, to be different. I didn't celebrate the divorce. That wasn't my place. But I was proud of him for choosing truth over comfort. And I was proud of myself for surviving the kind of lie that could have swallowed a lesser spirit whole. One day, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note: "For your records. You deserve the full truth." It was Gerald. The drive contained a backup of the original Nanny cam system, everything before and after the day Elise tried to erase me. I watched some of it. Not because I doubted myself, but because it reminded me how love looks in the unguarded moments. There I was, feeding Nora, singing to her, holding her when she cried, rubbing her back when she had gas. The kind of quiet love that doesn't perform, doesn't plead, just is. Watching it, I wept. Not from anger, not even from grief, but from validation. This was the kind of grandmother I was, not perfect, not flashy, but steady, devoted, real. I went to court one final time for a hearing related to my visitation arrangement. This time, I didn't go as the accused. Mariana stood beside me like she always had, patient, calm, composed. Elise was there too, hair pulled tight, eyes scanning the room like a trapped animal. Her attorney made one last attempt to block full visitation, citing emotional discomfort. The judge looked over the documents, the history, the retraction on file. Then he looked at me. "You've demonstrated nothing but consistency and care, Mrs. Gallagher. The court sees no reason to limit your contact." I didn't smile until I was outside. I stood on the courthouse steps, let the sun fall on my face, and breathed in the clearest breath I'd had in over a year. It tasted like something new, not just victory, freedom. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post online. I didn't gloat. I did something quieter, but to me, far more powerful. I wrote a letter to every woman at the senior center where I volunteered. It was titled, "In Case They Try to Silence You." I printed 20 copies. It said, "If someone ever tells a lie big enough to make you question your memory, your love, or your worth, hold steady. Truth takes time. Sometimes it comes in digital files, and sometimes in soft toddler arms reaching back for you. But it comes. And when it does, stand in it like sun through winter fog. You earned it. You survived it. You are not crazy. You are not a villain. You are a fire that refused to go out." I didn't sign my name. They knew it was me. Elise moved to another city the following spring. She lost her bid for primary custody, though she retained visitation. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she was trying to rebrand herself as a parenting coach online. I didn't interfere. The internet had a memory longer than mine. Every time someone searched her name, they'd find the truth. Not because I'd shouted, but because I'd documented. Carefully, truthfully, legally, poetically. Nora's now old enough to ask questions. Why don't I go to Mommy's house more? Why did everyone get mad that time? I answer gently, age appropriately. I tell her families are complicated, that people make mistakes, that love means protecting others, even when it's hard. She once asked, were you scared when they said you were bad? I said, yes. But then I remembered who I really was. She thought about that, then said, I think you're good. I kissed her hand. I think you're right. These days, I wake up with purpose again. My knees still ache. My hands sometimes forget the grip of a jar lid, but my heart, my spirit, stronger than ever. I garden. I write. I mentor two younger women who are navigating their own messy family betrayals. We laugh. We cry. We remind each other that dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide not to let them take. And every time I hear Nora's footsteps running toward me, shouting, Grammy! Across a room, I remember why I fought so hard. Not just for her, but for me. I sit on my porch in the evening light, a book in my lap, a child's laughter floating from the garden behind me. The past is still there. The false accusation, the silence, the sting of betrayal. But it doesn't define me. I am no one's scapegoat. No one's threat. I am a woman who stood up, held firm, and waited for the truth to come home. And now I am living my own life. Not the one they tried to write for me, but the one I chose, word by quiet word.